Okay, as promised, we're joined by David Mace, the founder of Sportify Insurance. David, welcome.
Thank you, Randy. It's a pleasure to be with you.
It's you've got an exciting company. Could you just sort of, give us about a 40,000 foot kind of flyover view of what Sportify is?
Perfect. And as we had discussed previously, Randy, it's basically our efforts as insurance professionals to bring the Lloyd's of London market, the specialized consortium of insurers in the UK, bring their capability to insure complex risks and bring that down to effectively the base of the pyramid of the tremendous amateur athlete market that we have in this country.
And how much of that, Dave, is reflective of how this whole athletic system has changed and kind of morphed over the course of the last probably 20 years? I think it was exemplified by basketball, which basically turned into the AAU model, and high school basketball became kind of almost like an afterthought. But it's really affected a lot of other sports for kids, mainly because, or I should say people under 18, mainly, because everyone is so focused on the pro side for a lot of the sports. Now, football is a little bit different, but it's really been a phenomenon over the last couple of decades.
You're absolutely right, Randy, in that we have a partnership with a company that is involved in player development camps, again, at that high school amateur level. And we were in discussions with them where we were trying to calculate or estimate the size of the amateur athlete industry in this country. And it is in the several tens of billions of dollars, billions with a B, in terms of value. And as you've mentioned, yes, that progression has come at a torrid pace in the last 2 decades, where nowhere else on this planet do we have the amateur athlete industry that we have in this country. Every service, every good in terms of a widget, but every service in terms of training, advice, counseling, recruitment service, all of those are as professional as they can be in terms of the quality, sometimes in terms of the cost. But if you look at the risk perspective, up until now, there really hasn't been a robust policy to protect these young athletes in the event they become disabled, either from sports participation accident or from a named illness, what we deem as a critical illness. There is no protection for them to continue progressing to that next level and be able to finance their college education.
My first question, the more I looked into Sportify, was, when we have the club system, and let's use basketball for an example.
Sure.
There is a payoff at 19 to 20 years old for the elite athletes. They're going to go to the NBA. They're going to play basketball. That finite percentage that do that, they may go one and done, where they go to college for 1 year, but there is a cash payoff for a small percentage of those guys. Now, on the other sports, it's got to be a lot harder to figure out because of the unbelievable amount of numbers involved. Not only, everyone talks about, FBS, major college football. And there are 3 or 4 different layers of college football that kids have an opportunity to get a scholarship to go play sports as football, as an example.
That's right. And there's several layers, as you mentioned, of scholarships available in all those different schools and all those different sports. And as you've mentioned, basketball, when you look at let's say the more non-high revenue generating sports like a soccer or a volleyball at a major university or even at a Division II school, as we've discussed, The end game, and as you said, and the payout is a scholarship, the proverbial full ride. And when we talk about how professional this market, where we're still dealing with amateurs, is, the parents are making a tremendous investment, because as college education gets more expensive, the competition for free education is more fierce.
Yeah, I mean, David, you could be talking about potentially 5 years at a school, which some kids do that scholarship wise. That could be $350,000.
Exactly. And now, and let's even look before you even get to college, while you're still in high school, that is your insurable interest. Because now that you're a top athlete and you have demonstrated that you have interest from a school to recruit you as a scholar athlete, you now have that tremendous risk exposure that if something happens to you before you even get to college, you have tremendous financial risk as an athlete, but also as a parent who is continuing to invest, who is continuing to collaborate in your development as an athlete, and therefore achieving the ultimate goal of the full ride or college education under a scholarship.
Yeah. So is it all predicated on, this may be too simplistic, but let's say my son played college football. He played at Wake Forest and UCLA. He was a scholarship athlete. And he received offers when he was in high school from quite a few schools. If you're going through this process, is that part of the, I guess, the prerequisite that has to be had from the other side, from the insurance side? They have to have the letters of intent or the offer letters in order to quantify how much this insurance actually is for?
Yes, that's spot on. And what you've mentioned there, those are what they call the eligibility criteria. So it's your eligibility to apply for insurance. And we effectively have 5 of them, and they're logical from what you've mentioned, in that if you can demonstrate you've received some sort of written or social media communication from a university university or college where they're expressing their interest in recruiting you as a scholar athlete. Number 2, and we go back again to the professionalism of this industry. Number 2 is you've elected to attend, or you've been selected to attend, a college recruitment camp or a showcase event. Number 3 is that you are recognized in the national media outlet and you are ranked as a scholar athlete. And again, where we talk about professionalism of this industry, you can go now online and pretty much search any athlete who is ranked, let's say on a major sports website or on a recruitment website. You can actually see all the offers or all the verbal commitments that those athletes have currently registered. Then the proverbial signature of the NLI, the National Letter of Intent, or the receipt of a scholarship offer. Those are all the eligibility criteria. But let's, again, before we even get to the NLI stage, all those other eligibility criteria we discussed, we know full well, they're still non-binding. But then that's where you have the most risk as a student athlete, right? When before you're even to the NLI stage, you have to compete. You have to compete even harder now, because now that you're on the radar, now that the pressure is on because you're nationally recognized in a website or you're getting all this interest from school, competition's going to get even tougher.
Well, it's amazing. And people can go to sportifyinsurance.com, just sort of in general, to check out your company.
That's correct. Exactly. Those 2 words. And it's Sportify with the word sport and the word insurance spelled out. And then they can actually view the eligibility criteria that we discussed, and then take a look at the coverage summary. And also what's important is looking at the exclusions as well.
When you talk about the exclusions, and obviously, if you do something as an athlete, student athlete, against the law, against the rules, whatever,
Right.
which jeopardizes your scholarship, you're going to have an issue. But how about from the other side? Because what people don't understand enough is, a full ride, quote unquote, which 4 to 5 years, you have 5 years to get your 4 years of eligibility in. But athletic scholarships are basically a series of 1 year grants and scholarships. How does that figure into the process? Because it's not unusual. We see it predominantly in football, which is one of the cash, the money sports. You see it some in basketball and some of the other sports, but they run players off that, don't prove to be as good as maybe they had originally thought, or, maybe just between school and other factors aren't part of the program. At least they don't want them to be part of the program. How does that factor into the insurance?
Yes, Randy, and from once you're at the college level, our policy is designed to be able to allow you to continue financing education in the event of permanent disability. You have to withdraw from the team, or let's say the scholarship is certainly rescinded because of your injury or your illness.
Okay.
So, and as you said, if you, and this is where insurance it's very black and white, and it's almost cruel in a sense that if you're a non-performer, well, you can't buy insurance for that. If you're a non-performer, the insurance doesn't apply.
Okay.
However, if you're a performer and you have an occurrence that no one can control, and that's basically how accidents happen, right? Or how illnesses manifest themselves. That is the spirit, and that is the intent of the coverage. Okay. And as you've mentioned, with regard to certain exclusions, if you're doing something that you're not supposed to be doing, as you said, like in the law or under the influence, or if your accident or your illness is provoked or it occurs because of your use of prohibited substances. And substances, again, that are banned by your athletic governing body. Those are things that are going to be typically excluded in any policy, and they certainly are here as well. Also, one of the things that, talking about the pragmatism of insurance, we are a special contingency disability program. So unfortunately, it's not a life insurance policy either. So in the unfortunate event of death, there's no coverage. Why?
Well, a scholarship's the least of your problems.
Exactly. Yes. And again, you hate to say that and you hate to point that out. But that's the nature. Again, that's to reiterate the nature of the coverage. Yeah. And the full intent is to allow you to continue to get your education. Because as you said, Randy, and you can attest to this, being a successful professional athlete, it gets harder from once you're at the NCAA, it's hard enough. And then you're looking at the 1% of the 1% once you get into the professional ranks, right?
Yeah. Now,
a lot of things can happen.
If I'm a parent out there right now and I'm listening to this, one of the things that's going to come to mind is cost. Is it comparable to the cost that some parents are putting out there from a training standpoint? I mean, that was one of my first educations to high school athletics or getting into high school was kids have trainers. And I was like, What do you mean? Don't they have strength coaches? But no, you have to have a trainer. How comparable is the insurance to that sort of a situation?
It is. That's a very good question. And before I address that, let me quickly backtrack and mention that the sports are all ranked. We cover 16 sports, and they are ranked in terms of their risk rating. Unfortunately, football is the highest rated sport. So that's going to give you the highest premium, the highest cost per individual policy, and then depending on the limit of insurance that you purchase. The non-contact sports, logically. They're going to be the lowest rated risk and therefore have the lowest cost.
Mm-hmm.
But when you take the entire spectrum, as you said, the annual premium of this policy, when you annualize all of the monthly payments that parents make nowadays, as you said, in trainers, there's parents that even pay nutritional specialists
Oh yeah,
for
I
their
know.
student athlete.
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So when you lump all that up, it is comparable. Obviously, it's an additional expense, but it's comparable to you continuing on a pro rata basis, let's say, continuing that expense that you are already making for your child.
So this is insurance too, that everyone sort of knows the brand name of Lloyd's of London, who have been the sort of the gold standard, insurance wise, heck, forever, hundreds of years. They used to indemnify the shipping companies when they had sales.
Randy, that's fantastic. You mentioned that because you're looking at 1600s back then,
mm-hmm.
and Mr. Edward Lloyd started a coffee shop where eventually his customers gathered around, and they were investing in the safe passage of the ships from the British colonies back to the homeland, if you will. And you're right. That's exactly how the insurance market got started.
Wow, it's a fascinating subject, and congratulations. This is a great deal. This needs to be in front of more parents. I'll be honest with you, because I don't know how many people, not enough people, know that this is available.
And it's certainly one of the challenges as we get started with our rollout. We as professionals in our agency and in our respective roles, the group of partners, we have decades of experience in insurance, and the fact that Lloyd's, certain underwriters at Lloyd's decided to back this product is indicative of the relationships that we have been able to establish. As you said, Lloyd's getting started in a coffee house several hundred years ago, and continuing to evolve in terms of how complex we are as human beings. So if you take that very, very simple, basic principle of our human evolution, we have risk that evolves along with us, and therefore we need protection to also evolve along with the risk that we bear for us to continue progressing as a society.
So just a matter of who you share that risk with, right?
Exactly. And then how smart we are. So on the Sportify end, we have the trust and the backing from Lloyd's, and then they say, okay, well, you package it and you take it to market. And that's effectively how most of these relationships work with the Lloyd's underwriter and those that help us support the structure of this program in the Lloyd's market, and then how we take it into the respective geographic locations like the United States in this case.
That's fantastic.
And again, as you think, what a tremendous country that we have. And with everything that's going on nowadays with current events and geopolitics and so forth, if we look at our country, nowhere else in the planet do we have such a competitive, such a fierce, yet I want to say even such a beautiful and attractive industry of sports. And we can hopefully say that it. Yeah, right. And that is the last, hopefully we can say that is the last bastion where we all come together as a collective and progressive society, is with sports.
That's great. Hey, David, thank you so much for joining me. Good luck to you and Sportify going forward. What a fantastic concept.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure and an honor to be able to talk with you, albeit by remotely, but it's a pleasure to be with you and be able to talk just briefly about what we're trying to accomplish and contribute, again, in this continuous development of our amateur athlete industry. And it's our amateur athlete industry, as a last minute plug, I want to get in that it's an amateur athlete industry that is important in the sense that it also helps develop females And when we're talking about end games, right? The professional ranks, we know they're more predominantly benefiting male athletes. So when you look at college education and then athletic scholarship in college for females, that is the ticket, right? It's because they're probably not going to progress to be financially successful as a professional athlete. They're going to be financially successful as a professional entrepreneur, an executive, a doctor, a lawyer, an attorney. Right. And that, again, is at the essence of what we're trying to protect.
That's great. David, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye now. Yeah, David Mace and Sportify. Check it out, Sportify Insurance.com. Sportify, Sportify, Insurance.com. How you doing when it's time?